The first time Emily sang, no one heard her. Not really. Her voice was fragile, like a thread of smoke curling into the night. She sang in her bedroom with the door closed, her hands pressed tightly to her chest as if holding her own ribs together. Music had always been inside her. It came when she felt joy, when she felt pain, when silence felt too heavy to bear. But outside that door was a world that told her she was too quiet, too plain, and not enough. So she kept her voice tucked away, convinced it was safer to be a whisper than to risk being silenced. At school, she blended into the background. She wasn't the loudest, the funniest, or the prettiest. She wore oversized sweaters and kept her hair loose to cover her face. Her classmates passed her by like she was invisible, and sometimes she wondered if that was exactly what she was, meant to be, a shadow at the edge of other people's lives. But there was one place she felt alive, the old piano in the corner of the music room. After classes, when the hallways emptied, she would sneak in and let her fingers drift across the keys. Softly, she'd hum along, weaving together broken pieces of herself into melodies no one else ever heard, until one day a broken bar someone did. Mr. Carter, the music teacher, had returned to the room unexpectedly to grub his sheet music. He froze in the doorway, listening. Emily hadn't noticed him yet. Her eyes were shut, her voice carrying gently but beautifully, like a secret pouring itself into the air. When she finally opened her eyes, she nearly jumped back at the sight of him. Her face turned crimson. "Yeah, I'm sorry," she stammered, reaching to close the piano lid. "I didn't mean to." "Don't stop," he said, his voice firm but kind. "You have something rare, Emily. Do you know that?" She shook her head quickly. Rare? She wasn't rare. She was invisible. But Mr. Carter wasn't smiling politely the way teachers do when they're just trying to be encouraging. His eyes were steady. He meant it, and that scared her even more. Over the next few weeks, he urged her to practice in front of him. Just him. No audience, no judgment, just the two of them and the music. At first, she could barely get a note out without her throat closing up. Her fear of being heard was like chains around her voice. She fumbled, faltered, shook with nerves. But he never once told her to stop. He never once said she wasn't enough. Instead, he said things like, "Sing like the world needs your story. Sing like you believe the sound belongs to you. Sing as if one person out there is waiting for your voice to save them." Slowly, something began to change. She started to believe, just a little, that maybe her voice wasn't a weakness. Maybe it was a gift. Then came the hardest challenge. The school was hosting a talent showcase. Mr. Carter signed her up without asking. When she found out, panic surged through her. "I can't," she whispered, her hands trembling as she clutched the sign-up sheet. "They'll laugh at me. I'll freeze. I'll ruin everything." "Emily," he said softly, "you've spent years believing you're just a whisper. But you're not. You're a song. And songs aren't meant to stay hidden. They're meant to be heard." She cried that night, not because she didn't want it, but because part of her did, and that terrified her even more. The night of the showcase arrived. The auditorium buzzed with chatter, laughter, and the shuffling of restless feet. Emily stood backstage, knees shaking so hard she thought she might collapse. Her name was called. For a moment, her body refused to move. Then she saw Mr. Carter at the side of the stage. He wasn't clapping or cheering loudly. He simply nodded, steady and calm, as if to say, "You already have everything you need." Somehow, her legs carried her out. She sat at the piano, her hands hovering above the keys, her heart hammering in her chest. The crowd was so big, too big. And then she closed her eyes. The first note left her lips shaky, fragile. The second was stronger. By the third, her voice stopped trembling. She stopped thinking about the crowd. She stopped thinking about fear. She thought about the girl who had been told she was invisible, and how wrong they were. She thought about every time she'd hidden her voice, and how it deserved the light. She sang. And this time, the world listened. Her voice rose and fell, raw and beautiful, carrying every piece of her story, the loneliness, the hope, the fragile courage that had been growing inside her all along. The auditorium was silent, utterly still, as if the entire room was holding its breath. By the time she finished, her hands trembling above the keys, the silence shattered into thunderous applause. Emily looked out into the crowd, wide-eyed, tears stinging her vision. She had thought she was just a whisper, but in that moment, she was a song. Years later, Emily would remember that night not as the moment she became great or famous, but as the moment she finally believed her voice mattered. Because sometimes, all it takes is one person who sees the music inside you, one person who believes you are more than what the world tells you, one person who gives you permission to step out of the shadows. She thought she was just a whisper broken bar until someone believed in her enough to let her become a song. And the truth is, maybe we all start as whispers, but if we find the courage or the people who help us believe, we can become something more. We can become songs. SEO-Boosted message for the audience. Don't let the world convince you that you're invisible. Your voice, your story, your presence matters. Sometimes you just need to borrow someone else's belief until you find your own.